You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Evan Brand, it's Dr. J, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. What about you?
Oh, doing pretty good, man. It was really hot down here in Austin. I was on the boat last weekend doing a lot of water skiing, trying to stay cool.
Yeah, I'll say I don't miss the 110-degree days. I'm happy with like 85, 90.
Yeah, it's not getting that hot. It's probably like 95 to 99 kind of thing.
I was dying what was it? I guess it was almost a summer and a half ago, 2 summers ago there. It was incredibly hot. That was when the drought was still there. I think it's a lot better now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's much better now. Absolutely.
Cool.
Well, how was your weekend?
It was great. I don't even remember what I did, but I know it was good.
Well, I know we talked pre-show. We were going to talk about some of these hormones that affect appetite. 2, for instance, being leptin and ghrelin. And these are 2 hormones that have a major effect on energy balance. So leptin is one of these hormones that helps kind of with satiation. And the more leptin sensitive you are, the more apt you are to be satiated and to not have these massive cravings. And leptin and insulin are 2 hormones that work together. So when we talk about resistance, like leptin resistance or insulin resistance, they kind of are connected because insulin is this hormone and it helps kind of open the doors in the cell, so to speak, so we can get nutrients from the bloodstream into the cell so the cell can essentially use it for energy. Now, insulin, too much of it can drive open the doors so it goes into the fat cell, right? It can go into the fat cell and it can cause fat storage. And the more that insulin bell is rung, so to speak, the person that starts to, open that door becomes less, more resistant to open that door. And the more resistance we have with insulin, the more that blood sugar accumulates in the bloodstream, and the more blood sugar gets converted to fat, the less we burn our calories for energy, the more we store our calories, and the more resistant we are to burning sugar. So essentially that's insulin resistance, and the whole downstream effects then affect leptin because leptin is higher in obese patients, same with insulin resistance. And the more leptin resistant we are, the more our appetite kind of gets away from us and is more out of control, and we're more likely to eat bad foods, which then perpetuate the same problem again.
Right, and these are the people that they can graze all day and they never get satiated. You're just constantly eating. You're never really getting that full signal of, I feel good, now I'm going to go back to life. You're just constantly, you're the person who, if you open up your desk drawer right now, maybe you got a protein bar in there, maybe you got a candy bar, maybe you have some other type of snack food, you could potentially have some leptin resistance if that's you. And I'm all about being prepared. If I go on a hike, I'm going to bring some jerky, some nuts, some other foods, but it's not, I don't have to snack all day, every day.
Exactly. That's the big thing. So we keep insulin and leptin essentially in balance, doing the same things. Some of those are going to be, 1, keeping refined sugar out of your diet, or at least out 80 to 90% of the time. If you're obese, you have a BMI that's upwards of 30, 35, You have a waist that's greater than 40 inches as a male, 35 as a female. That's a pretty good indicator off the bat. More than likely you're obese, and more than likely you have this whole insulin, leptin resistant pattern happening. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to outline some of the main factors here that are influencing people and their hormones. One is the diet, which you've already touched upon. That's going to be influencing these hormones. 2 and 3 are going to be toxins. So whether this is like environmental toxins, like endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors here, or just things that are going to trigger our nervous system to act up. So if you have adrenal issues, it's likely that you have some other hormonal issues that could be tied into this, and you're having the blood sugar crashes, you're not getting satiated, maybe you're getting lightheaded when you stand up, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really want to make sure we keep the refined sugar out of our diet. Excess fructose. Fructose is one of these major fruit sugars, but we really see it higher in high fructose corn syrup. So these are going to be almost all of our refined junk foods are going to be very high in fructose, which are going to drive this whole insulin resistance mechanism from happening.
And I doubt most people listening to the show are consuming high fructose corn syrup intentionally. However, if you go out to a restaurant somewhere, you get a decent quality meat, but then you do some type of sauce with it, I guarantee the sauces are going to have some corn syrup in there. So is it going to kill you if you do one dose of it? No. But if you are having issues with your weight, then you may have to be a little bit more dialed in.
Yeah, a couple of the patterns we'll see on blood work when we see like excess fructose is we'll see higher cholesterol, and cholesterol by itself being higher, mid 200s and up is not necessarily a bad thing, but we'll also see the elevations in triglycerides with it. So typically over 100 for the triglycerides is a pretty good sign, or even more specific is a triglyceride to HDL ratio that's greater than 2. So what does that mean? That means, well, if your HDL is at 50, that's the so-called good cholesterol. Not really good cholesterol, but that's what everyone knows it as. That should be around 50 in this example. And if your trigs are, let's say, greater than 100, well, there's your greater than 2-to-1 ratio. You have over 2 times more triglycerides for short, than we do have for the HDL.
Yep.
That's a pretty good sign off the bat. We can also see elevations in blood pressure as well. And one of the things we'll even start to see is we'll potentially see even things like slightly elevated liver enzymes. We'll see that in NASH, non-alcoholic steatotic hepatitis. That's basically liver issues, like this liver kind of disorder that we see in alcoholics, but it's a non-alcoholic version.
Wow. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Any comments on that, Evan?
Well, so I wanted to talk about people that are struggling with weight loss. That's mainly who this episode's geared toward. It's important to learn about these hormones in general, but if you are having trouble with weight loss, you and I both, we help people with that, but it's not the first priority. A lot of times we have to get these other foundations in place. We have to build the house, build the foundation, build the walls, get the adrenals in check, try to optimize the function of the gut before we come and focus on weight loss. But the issue with these hormones here is that people are not able to detoxify. And so if we look at your fat cells are going to be storing all of these toxins. So whether this is hormones, whether this is various pesticides and other chemicals, whether this is chemicals from your conventional skincare products, maybe before you went all natural with your skincare products, hopefully you've done that, you still have the residual impact of these toxins in the fat cells. It's not like they're just going to magically leave the fat cell and flush out of the body. So when we're talking about these hormones, getting the adrenals healthy, getting the gut healthy, those are our first priorities. And then after that, we want to try to help to improve your elimination of some of these toxins so that these hormones can work better, these insulin cycles, these leptin cycles. And so if we're talking things like magnesium supplements, we're talking things like vitamin C, maybe some charcoal, maybe some physical exercise too to get these fat cells burning up and excreting the toxins. So whether it's something like yoga, if you're really adrenally fatigued, Justin and I both are not going to tell you to do a CrossFit workout. So could be some yoga, could be massage, some body work, could be some infrared saunas. I like near infrared saunas. Those are good. Massage, and then other detox stuff. I know you talk a lot about amino acids. helping to detox. So there's that route too. Basically, we're trying to just help the liver do its job a little bit better so that it's not so busy focusing on all these toxins. Like the average person out in America, in the world, their liver is so busy just trying to keep up with all the toxins that are coming in, the onslaught of toxins from the food, the water, the air, the soil, etc., that your body can't process the hormones the way that it needs to. So really, detoxification should be a daily thing, but also it should be an intervention that we use at the right time when a person's foundations are in check.
Exactly. And you mentioned a couple things regarding toxins and obesity. There's one article here it was written by Dr. Mark Hyman. He was quoted as saying the toxins activate neutrophils. Now, neutrophils are the largest percentage of blood cells in our body are neutrophils, and these will typically upregulate with bacterial infections especially. Now, these things will increase these various inflammatory cytokines. The jeopardy words for them are TNF alpha, interleukin 6, and they promote insulin resistance. They affect a couple of these different mechanisms such as PPAR and nuclear factor kappa beta, and they create inflammation. And that's one of the big things they do, and they create inflammation by suppressing cytokine signaling. Now, what's the big take home there? A lot of different big words, but what that means is inflammation makes your body hard to be satiated and makes your body more likely to store fat. That's the big take home right there. So infections drive inflammation. Inflammation will then affect some of the cytokine signaling and more likely to make you leptin resistant. When you're leptin resistant, you're less likely to be satiated. When you're less likely to be satiated, you start eating more foods that are going to be detrimental to your health and to your weight.
Yep. So if we're trying to do chicken or egg here, like I always like to do with you, we could start at the top of the food chain with just some type of chronic stress, right? So whether this is like environmental stressors, emotional stressors, something that's contributing to the leaky gut situation in the beginning. Now the gut's leaky, so now these toxins can get into the bloodstream even more, driving up more inflammation. Then let's say somebody picks up a parasite infection. Now they have even more inflammation. Now let's say they had something like blasto or H. pylori. Now their small intestine's damaged, so there's more inflammation there, and now they're completely inflamed. Maybe they jump on an acid blocker. Maybe they jump on aspirin. So they're becoming more toxic. Now the liver can't keep up with what it's doing because it's trying to flush out the acetaminophen, right? So it's crazy how things can spiral out of control. So I guess if we zoom back out and then try to look at the takeaways, the foundational supplements are very helpful. So if we're talking about our foundations here, this would be something like probiotics, if it's the right time for you to use them, not always should you just jump on a probiotic. Some fish oil, some good fatty acids for inflammation. I would say some glutamine could be really helpful for this. Some trace minerals could be helpful. What about you, Justin? What do you think about like foundational supplements? What would be something like a generality that we could make for people that have everything else in order?
So we're already assuming that sleep's dialed in, right? Because we know leptin in sleep's pretty important. By the way, leptin is secreted by your fat cells too. So the more weight you have on your body, the more the downward cycle essentially gets worse and worse. So like if you're leaner, you already have a big advantage, right? But if you're leaner, you already have more muscle and you already are more insulin sensitive. So it's kind of this like downward cycle where the more overweight you are and the more problems you have, the more feedback mechanisms feed back in to make us more insulin resistant, more leptin resistant, more cravings. So the problem becomes even harder to deal with the more overweight we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot to mention it. I actually did, when I was writing Rim Rehab, I actually did some research. It was a study from the International Journal of Endocrinology, and they looked at sleep deprivation. So people that got 4 hours of sleep per night, which hopefully most people listening are getting more than 4 hours, but when they had that little of sleep, their leptin levels decreased. So people were going to be less satiated, and then their ghrelin levels, their hunger hormone, was increased by 28%. Even after the subjects were given a sleep compensation of 10 hours per night the following 2 days. And then it said that it increased their carbohydrate cravings by 45%. So there's a few different numbers there, but if you're sleeping poorly just a few nights per week, it sounds like here, that's enough to really destroy these hormones. So if you think you're doing everything great during the day, but like you mentioned, maybe your sleep hygiene's not in order and you're not sleeping restfully, that's going to be driving up these hormones, and you're going to wake up with carbohydrate cravings instead of wanting, say, some good sausage and eggs for breakfast instead.
Yes, and when I look at leptin resistance, Gary Taub had a great analogy years back. I spoke with him, and he said, stick your thumb out, right? Imagine a hammer comes down, and that hammer whacks your thumb. Now, all of the swelling that happens, these various interleukins and cytokines and all of these different pathways that are happening underneath the skin, that's like leptin and all the TNF alpha and all the interleukins and the PPAR, gamma agonists, all these different fancy Jeopardy words. That's what's happening underneath the skin. But he said insulin resistance is the hammer. And then the hammer hitting the skin and that initial response, that's leptin. And then everything else kind of spirals out of control. So he's like, well, my focus is on the hammer. Other people, as they go into all the little dominoes that knock over many, many times down the road. So if we look at the top two things, I put more of my focus on the hammer, and then you can say that maybe leptin's the next domino that falls over after insulin, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So looking at that, really simple. We keep fructose to a minimum. If you're significantly overweight, 30 to 50 pounds more, keep fructose under 25 to 15 grams a day.
What would that look like? Explain people, how would that actually be? Like a handful of blueberries per day? What are we talking?
Well, my patients have access to the members area on my website, and over there I have a specific handout that kind of outlines all of the fructose that are going to be in every type of food source. I'm going to pull it up here, and I'll read a couple of things off it right now. But typically, vegetables aren't going to have very much fructose, right?
Right.
So you're going to be pretty good with fructose on a vegetable standpoint.
Yeah, if you're doing something like a paleo template, or if you have to go the AIP route, you're going to have that dialed in. You're not going to have to worry about that.
Yeah, and I did an article, I think, last year on is fruit bad for you? And I think I outlined that in that article. But let me just give you a for instance. If you do something like strawberries, you get, 1 cup of strawberries is 3.8 grams of fructose.
Wow, and nobody's eating 5 cups of strawberries per day.
No, that'd be a lot, right? Maybe even if you did 1 or 2 cups, you're still only at 8, not a big deal.
That's
but then
great.
When you go over to like watermelon, that's 11, or you go over to like mango, that's 16 for a half a cup. So you just got to be more careful of like the tropical, more sugary fruits. So I just say if you keep to medium to lower sugar fruits, which are going to be berries, even an apple will have about 9.5. So you just got to be careful. If you do an apple and 2 servings of berries and maybe a banana, now you're in the 30 range. So you just got to be careful with that. So keep to the moderate to lower sugar fruits, especially your berries, lemon, lime, grapefruit, passion fruit, green apple, maybe an orange. You're going to be pretty much okay.
I wild foraged some blackberries last night.
Nice.
We went on a hike, and I found a couple blackberry bushes. They're not all the way ready, but there were a few, like at least maybe a half dozen of ripe blackberries. It was amazing.
That's awesome. Very cool.
So my fructose level was approved.
Yeah, you just got to be careful. If you have FODMAPs, that's one of the only berries that have a higher content of FODMAPs in it.
Blackberries.
Yeah, that's my trivia for the day, Evan.
Good.
So kind of recapping, like you have the diet piece in. Like if you're significantly overweight, 50 pounds plus for a man, 30 or 40 for a female, keep that fructose down. Keep it below 25, ideally below 15. That's number one. Cut all grains out. Because remember, inflammation plays a role on leptin. And we know grains have things like lectins in there, as phytates that block minerals. There's a significant percent of the population that is non-celiac gluten sensitive, right? Where they have genes that are creating inflammation and inflammatory response in their body because of their genetics to the gluten proteins, whether it's gluten in wheat, barley, rye, or it's the other grains that are cross-reacting with it. And so we have the diet piece dialed in. We're eating good proteins, fats, and carbs. That's great. And now we make sure the quality's up, right? We're making sure we're eating organics because we know that toxins can create leptin resistance. So the easiest way to decrease toxin exposure is make sure you're eating organic. Make sure it's clean fats. Make sure your protein's antibiotic, hormone free. Make sure your water's filtered, right? We know certain drugs have an increase on obesity, potentially affecting weight gain and leptin, such as like the MAO drugs, the monoamine oxidase antipsychotics, or lithium, or the SSRIs. These are like the serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So
I'm sure you and I have both heard that story a dozen times of women that jump on an antidepressant and they gain 20 pounds.
Mm-hmm. And also their libido goes in the tank too.
Yeah. So that's all. So that's hormonal related, also neurotransmitter related, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Remember, hormones affect the reuptake systems in the brain. That's why women will take birth control pills to kind of even out their hormones so their mood balances out too. So we can do that naturally by fixing why their hormones are out of balance, which typically is driven by some adrenal stress and some blood sugar stress and some infection stress. And a lot of times they're swimming in a sea of estrogens because of our environment with chemicals and toxins and fluoride in the water. So if we clean up our food, we clean up our water quality, we balance our blood sugar, we make sure we're not overdoing fructose, even with super healthy things. Like if you're having 2 or 3 servings of berries at every meal and then a banana at night or this or that, then you're at 50 grams of fructose. You got to be careful with that.
Yep.
So you just got to make sure that we have the blood sugar under control. And then remember, proteins and fats are going to help with your appetite more, because the big issue with leptin, it's that kind of like inhibitor valve for appetite. And we know certain things like adiponectin, peptide YY, CCK, cholecystokinin. These are really important hormones that help tell us we're full.
Yep.
And when we eat high quality meats and fats, like proteins and fats, we get that feedback signal better. That's why, think about it. How many people have gone and just eaten a dozen eggs in the morning?
Never, unless they're trying to do Rocky style and they put them in a blender, but that's not eating them.
But how many people have eaten a whole box of cereal?
A million.
Yeah, I mean, it's very common. Or a pizza, late night pizza.
Yep.
Right? Try looking at that like, pizza, and imagine like a steak that big or something, right?
That'd be insane.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it. You give me a 16, 20-ounce steak, you're done. That's it.
Yep.
But with a pizza, you'll eat that whole thing, and everyone's had that experience, especially anyone that's gone to college. They can recall those memories of their time. So the reason why is, right, well, if you go back to the Pringles commercials of the 90s, I'm dating myself. Remember that? Let's see if it's in your subconscious, Evan. Once you pop,
you can't stop.
that's it. See, you got it, man. And that's the thing, right? What they're saying is once you eat this carbohydrate-rich, not to mention the MSG, monosodium glutamate, which actually
appetite stimulant.
Yeah, but it also doubles and triples your insulin levels. There's research on that. And if you're double and tripling your insulin levels, guess what you're doing to your leptin levels?
Yeah, that's not good. Also, you know what? Another thing which most people don't think about too is you're hyperstimulating those brain cells too. So you're causing neurotoxicity. You're revving those little brain chemicals up. So you're getting high from it too. It's crazy. It really is.
Now, we could have this podcast be like a couple hours on this topic, but that's why we talk about like an organic, whole food kind of paleo template. We automatically cut out like the MSG. We automatically cut out like the aspartame and the crap to it. So there are articles linking MSG to leptin resistance because of the extra insulin and the extra leptin. So remember, when we talk about eating good organic foods, we're automatically getting insulin resistance under control, and we're automatically, as a result, remember the Tobbs analogy, right? Insulin's the hammer, leptin and all the other cascades are the effect after the fact that we get leptin under control, and then we get your willpower under control, meaning you can choose the right foods and you can feel satiated.
Yep, well said. So I think maybe just wrapping this up then, we talked about the diet. We talked about looking for infections, because if the diet's clear and we know that that's not your cause of inflammation, then we have to look for the other sources too. So we talked about adrenals. You brought that up. You brought up the gut. Ruling in, ruling out infections with people, that's a big cause. Any other hidden causes of inflammation? Like if we're talking besides gut, besides adrenals, besides exogenous endocrine disruptors?
Well, I would just say the fact that we are exposed to toxins in the environment outside of just what's in our food, right? Just stuff we're breathing. I mean, God forbid, but there's 2 billion pounds per year of pesticides dumped in our environment. Even if you're not eating it, you may still be getting it in via water supply or just runoff. Who knows? Pharmaceutical drugs are in the water supply now. So if you don't have a really good water filter, there's probably some ways you're going to get exposed to it. If you're walking downtown, like I was in Austin over the weekend, well,
A lot of traffic.
You walk by a big truck that has a whole bunch of, exhaust coming out. I know Dr. Kurt Wohler mentioned with you in one of your interviews that he's seeing a lot of gasoline, like benzene and gasoline molecules in some of the organic acid testing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're getting exposed to this stuff, and some people may need extra detoxification support. They need extra antioxidants and extra phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification support in their diet because of the accumulation of these toxins. So we may have to stack on top of a good diet and on top of a good lifestyle specific extra supplements to help fill in the gaps of what's going on.
Right. Yeah. So you're saying basically, in a perfect world, if we didn't have this toxin exposure, maybe the diet would cover us. But in the modern world, it's just not. I'm almost convinced that I could be classified as someone with like chemical sensitivity.
Right.
I mean, if my wife and I walk past someone with like extreme amounts of perfume on, I get an instant headache. So I think there's probably still some liver stuff going on with me. I probably need to up my antioxidants. So you're saying we need to counteract this. In a perfect world, if we had 100 acres of forest to live in, and then we had a perfect diet, our toxin load would be less, and the antioxidants we get naturally in the food may be enough. But if you're in rush hour traffic and you don't have your recirc on in your car and you're breathing that stuff in, you need the extra antioxidant support.
Exactly. There's a phenomenon known as TILT, toxin-induced loss of tolerance. And that's where you get, sensitive to certain perfumes and things like that, just because your body has lost that tolerance because of the cumulative effect of the toxic load that you've been under. Now, I think with you, it's probably just that you get so used to being healthy that when you get exposed to some chemical, you're just really in touch with it. Like a lot of people find that with sugar, like they don't eat a lot of sugar and then they get exposed to like maybe a sip of soda, or they eat one of their kids' like fruit snacks and they're like, whoa, that was way too much sugar. And it could be just that like.
So you're thinking it's maybe not a dysfunction. It might just be that I've got back to baseline of pretty low toxin exposure. And then when I do, the body's like ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. My analogy to my patients is, well, it's like saying that the alcoholic has a stronger liver than you just because he gets drunk off of 20 beers and you get tipsy off of 1.
If I took one shot, I'm almost toast.
Wow.
So if you ever take me out to drink, you'll know that.
That's really good. That's good. Next time I fly you in here to Austin, I know you'll be a cheap date at least.
Yeah, exactly. One shot of tequila, for example, I'm done. That's it. Game over.
I hear you, man. I'm very similar. I don't need much alcohol, maybe 1 or 2, and I'm just, gently buzzed,
Yeah.
Just enough to kind of like lubricate the conversation, right?
Right. It. Oh, actually, a lot of people, they have to drink to have my level of social lubrication. Like I'm so socially adequate as I am naturally that most people have to drink to get to my level of being able to have a conversation.
Nice. I will give you 5 paleo brownie points for that one, Evan.
I pride on that one.
Very cool. So kind of just summarizing the whole TILT phenomenon, that tolerance-induced loss, or that toxicant-induced loss of tolerance, the more toxins that you get exposed to and the less ability your body has to excrete them, the more you'll have this TILT thing going on. So what Evan was saying before is right on. Diet and lifestyle is like solid, very important. If you're in a city area, you may want to think about getting a really good high quality air filter. I have one by Advanced Air in my store that I recommend and use. So justinhealth.com/shop, and it's my air filter over there. I think Evan may have one too. So a good air filter, especially if you're in the city, clean water, organic food. If your gut's not working, remember, if you have an infection and your gut's not working, you're not absorbing nutrients. That means you're not absorbing the antioxidants and the sulfur-based aminos to run your detox pathways adequately. So we may have increased oxidative stress and lower nutrients to run our phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. So get your gut looked at, run a good quality organic acid test to see if you have enough nutrients to run those pathways. If not, fill in the gaps, supplement a really good diet so you can be at optimal function. Anything else?
Yeah.
Evan?
Yeah, I want to direct people to stateoftheair.org. It'll take you to lung.org, the American Lung Association, and you can actually go to stateoftheair.org, and you can select your state, and then you can look at the particle pollution, because some of the biggest offenders are in the summertime when ozone is created from all of the exhaust and car fumes and things like that. We actually had some high air quality alerts here in Louisville last week, and it was in the high risk category. So not just, sometimes they'll say elderly people need to stay inside or very young. It was saying even the average person should be inside because the ozone level was so high. And then you also have something that's more damaging called PM 2.5 and then PM 10, really, really small microns. That's from other like industrial operations. Those were high too in my state, in my county. So look it up, look up your state, check out your county. We had an F for like several days out of the past few weeks, which is just horrible. Surprisingly, even Los Angeles was better, I guess, due to the ocean air.
And that's
over there.
stateoftheair.com?
Stateoftheair.org.
Ah.
And you can go, and you would just go for you and look up Texas and just look into, I can't even remember the name of the county now. What county is Austin in?
That's Travis County.
Travis, that's right. Yeah, you could look up Travis or some of the outskirts there.
Okay, cool. Oh,
yeah,
just summarizing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so people check that out. Check out your air quality, because it's not to say you need to live in a bubble, but it's something to consider. And it's another factor. There's not one thing that makes you or breaks you, which is why you and I have these discussions every week, because people can always make little improvements to their environment.
Yeah, exactly. And also people that are, cigarette smoke goes without saying, hey, if you're smoking marijuana too, remember, there's still incineration that's going on there with the plant or with the wrapping paper if you're doing a joint. Remember, there are polyaromatic hydrocarbon PAHs or heterocyclic amine compounds that you get through the incineration. So remember, that's adding to that, oxidative load, right?
Yep. So use a vaporizer if you're going to, consume it orally. If you're going to do topical, if you want to do soft gels.
Do it oil.
CBD oils, yeah,
or you
tinctures.
can do it in a tincture. So those are safer ways to do it so you don't get the incinerating compounds there.
Yep.
And also, we touched upon it, but why does exercise help? Exercise helps because if you're doing the right exercise, it puts on muscle. And the more muscle you have, the more insulin sensitive you are, right? The more you have these little GLUT4 receptors that reach out on the muscle and they pull sugar in better. So the more sugar you're able to pull in, the less insulin resistant you get. So muscle makes you more insulin sensitive by having more GLUT4s to pull sugar in. But also, when you're doing the exercise itself, you're pulling that blood sugar out of your bloodstream and burning it up too, which is going to make you more insulin sensitive as well.
That's great.
So toxins in your food, clean water, clean air, diet, lifestyle, exercise stuff. And then we also mentioned the gut and the supplements that may be needed extra if we have extra stuff going on. That's where patients should see their doctor, their functional medicine practitioner or physician, or reach out to us because we see patients like this all the time and we are experts at treating these issues.
Absolutely. Well said.
Evan, great day, man. You were on fire today.
All right. You too, man.
Love it. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.